Well, Mark,
Yes, Nick?
good to have you here on stage, and good to see everyone. I was going to introduce you, but I think Sean did a better job.
He was too kind. Thanks, Sean.
Yes, and we're going to talk about, besides swimming, freestyle 200 meters, what else have you done, right? So the list is really long, so I'm going to kind of read off this list just to get it out of the way, right? Currently, you're serving as the Executive Director of Community and Administration at the Global Esports Federation, co-chair of the recently concluded inaugural Olympic Esports Week local organizing committee. You're a bureau member of the World Aquatics, president of Singapore Aquatics, co-chair of the World Aquatics Championships 2025 local organizing committee. I think I'm halfway done. Hang on.
You don't have to go through the whole list, but thanks.
Executive Committee member of the Singapore National Olympic Committee, Olympic Council of Asia, Athletic Committee, right? And I think you've represented at major games in the Olympic Games, Asian Games, Commonwealth Games. I think you've got medals at the Southeast Asian Games, and you've also contributed as a coach, right? Most recently, coach of our Paralympian Ip Ping Siu, right? And I think you secured 4 Para-swimming championship gold medals, 2 Paralympic gold medals, and 7 world records, right? So, and also coach of the year, right, for both 21 and 22. So the big question I have on my mind, and perhaps on some people's mind here is, as executive director of the Global Esports Federation, you've been there right from the beginning, December 2019, where disclaimer, right, I'm also advisor to the board and all of that. But everyone may want to know, are you a gamer?
Am I a gamer?
Do you play games? Do you have time to play games?
Well, I wouldn't say what I do nowadays is gaming, right? Because I haven't done one title long enough to actually be competent or proficient in it. But I play a little bit of Dota. I play a little bit of PUBG Mobile. So much so that my wife told me to stop.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
And then even then, it's like, no, stop, right?
So I can actually understand a little bit of the games, converse with my different, advisors of the board as well as colleagues about what the game titles are. And
I play a little bit of Dota too, just a few thousand hours.
I'm sure you're a different level.
So I'm wondering at what level you're playing for your wife to say that you have to stop. Just kidding, right?
That's a difficult question to answer.
Yes, but you've definitely been busy, and today we're talking about what matters, right, to global esports, and specifically, I think, in your head as in esports, as Global Esports Federation, right? I think since GEF has been set up in December 2019, right, it's been almost a breakneck pace, and you've been kind of like at the heart of it all for a lot of Commonwealth Games, I think the European Games, now coming up the Pan Am Games, and Global Esports Tour that's gone to I think quite a few countries and all of that. So I think what are you seeing from the perspective of GEF? Where do you see things going? And where I'm coming from is that the industry saw a lot of growth, and then recently some consolidation. But GEF has been kind of like a bright spot in this space, and looks just been growing from heights to greater heights. So
yeah, great, thanks. Thanks, Nick. Maybe for the benefit of some of our guys here in the room, the Global Esports Federation is the convening body for esports. We started out in December 2019 in Singapore with 1 member. Now we have 150 national federations that have joined us throughout the world. They are part of this movement. We have 300 volunteers in 20 over commissions and committees that advise us on the strategies. Most recently at MINEPS, which is the ministers and senior officials in charge of physical education and sport conference in Baku, Azerbaijan. This is done by UNESCO. We stood on stage together with the Assistant Director General Gabriela Ramos to actually say that, you know, there's a partnership with Global Esports Federation to help with 4 of their SDGs, you know, primarily making sure that that gaming or the internet is a safe, inclusive space. And really what that means is talking about education, talking about different standards, and assisting in, you know, in identifying what are the right practices, anti-harassment practices, to make sure that everyone enjoys gaming, I guess, in a better condition or better atmosphere. So yeah, I think that's our GEF. What we have seen in the past 2 or 3 years is a greater emphasis in national participation in sports. For all of us who are familiar with esports, a lot of the time we see big money events which are held by the publishers, done for professional teams. But I think when GEF came on board, we saw this genre of esport, which is national participation under national flags with no prize pool money, but really talking about showcasing great values of inclusivity, equality, and so on and so forth. And really that speaks to GEF's mission, is really to add credibility, legitimacy, and prestige in esports.
Well, whenever we hear about esports events, I think the first thing that comes to people's mind is screaming crowds, lots of gamers, and millions of dollars in prize monies. Mm-hmm. And here you're talking about convening 150 countries with no prize money.
Yep. Across, well, we're starting small with 4 or 5 titles. But these are titles that we feel that speak to the values that we have. And they're also non-violent. So these are the titles that we hope to promote in future as well.
We'll come back to the values or the titles in a bit, and I mentioned that there's been a bit of a consolidation going on in the industry. We're going to dig into that in the next 2 panels upstairs in the Imperial Ballroom. This is a mini plug. Right? The next 2 panels.
Somewhere upstairs.
Right? But here, I want to dig more into the work of GEF, right? You mentioned about this Baku announcement that was significant, and I guess maybe some of the questions, right, in gamers' minds, or maybe to some people in the room, is that how is Baku or UNESCO SDG important to esports in a sense?
I think we look at how esports has proliferated throughout our society, right? It speaks to the young, speaks to the youth, and really the future of, you know, where we're headed to is going to be inherited by the youth. So through esports, through gamification, we can inculcate good values, good practices. You know, in development, we probably are talking about a game that is not only going to teach about sustainability, but also raise funds for sustainable practices and projects throughout the world. We're talking about creating standards in terms of how do we behave on the internet. Think like in Singapore we have the Safe Sport Code, where we talk about, you know, the different levels of harassment: physical, verbal, sexual, neglect. Likewise, we're going to have that when we talk about, you know, how we're going to conduct ourselves on the internet. We're going to talk about different accreditation and education as well. You know, when we talk about sports, you know, a realm which I'm quite familiar with, you know, and you spend like 6 or 7 hours in the pool, you know, people don't say that, you know, they're addicted to sport. You actually have a coach there. You actually have someone who's actually inculcating values through sport. So likewise, we're going to have coaching programs as well. They're going to teach pedagogy, teach kids how do they hone skills like communication, teamwork, discipline, through the guidance of a coach. And of course, with these coaches, we also talk about doing background checks to make sure that they are appropriate people to be teaching and inculcating values.
Kind of interesting, right? The last part about the background checks, and a lot of these esports players, they are quite young, so maybe a little bit challenging to a lot of new areas to kind of look into and work on.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. It's something which we feel is worthwhile doing, and it's essential for us to grow and progress in this sphere and industry of gaming. And
early on, you mentioned something about, I think actually, let's kind of like drill into this, right? You said addiction to sports. That's not something that we talk about.
Exactly.
Because we talk about addiction to gaming all the time,
Yep.
right? And but from your angle, right, it's just coming from both sides of the coin,
Yeah.
right? How do you see this, right? Addiction to gaming and addiction to sports, same thing, different thing. What are some of the? I would love to hear insights on this.
I guess if we look at the definition of sports, or how do we actually look at sports and define it, right? You're looking at being a structured competitive activity. You put activities, swimming, running, whatever, it becomes a sport. Sailing, shooting, whatever it is. But then we talk about structured competitive gaming. That's esports, and with a sport, you need someone to guide you, someone to actually inculcate values, someone to talk about strategy, someone to talk about imparting values that are going to transcend and transfer through other aspects of your life. And I think that is the non-tangible, but very important and relevant part of sports, and why we embrace it so much.
And the other point that you highlighted out of just now, you're describing some of the significant activities that came out of this Baku announcement was around standards, right? Standards, and that actually I think has been a bit of a challenge.
Yes.
In the esports industry, right? So very admirable, right? The GF is sort of take on some of these major challenges and mountains and all that. So on the standards side of things, right? The titles they come and go, right? Unlike I would say like swimming, been around for centuries.
Yeah, freestyle.
The rules have not changed in how long?
Yeah.
How many centuries? Maybe
one.
Okay. In esports, the rules can change every 3 months, right?
Yeah.
So having standards is really, really tough, right? And I think as compared to any other organization, I think GF has done a better job in trying to bring some structure, standards to the space, right?
Yes.
But it's a major challenge.
It is a major challenge, and I think the challenge is also that when it comes to esports and games and titles, right? You're talking about a game and title and a genre as well as a narrative, the story behind the game across multiple different cultures, multiple different nationalities and nations, and different standards and tolerances for all these various things. But the standards that we're going to be talking about, and this is an important meeting that my other executive director, Thanos Karagunas from Greece, is going to have next week in New York with the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, is really talking about informing people what they're going to expect. So that is the different standard. So you actually know what you're going to pick up when you play a specific game, and that is the standard. We don't have, like in Singapore, we have PG-13, or NC-16, or whatever, R21, right? We will not have that, because each country would have these different standards. But what we're going to do is we're going to let the consumer know what they're in for when they pick up a game.
That's will be very helpful, right? And I think one of the challenge being the Global Esports Federation is that not many esports titles are truly global today.
You're right. Yes.
Right.
I mean, we can pick up so many, that are very popular, immensely popular in China, but outside China, it's a different thing altogether.
So that's one of the significant challenge. And maybe we switch gears a little bit. We're kind of watching the time, and let's talk about maybe Olympic esports, OEW.
Yes.
Right. A lot of what do you call that? Virtual sports were featured.
Virtual simulated sports.
Virtual simulated sports were featured. Is that the future of where esports is going?
I think that's the future of the genre of virtual simulated sports. So if you look at the Olympic Esports Week this year, it was the inaugural event as the organizing committee. The brief was a single paragraph in January this year, where we talk about Agenda 2020+5, which is IOC's strategy paper, and recommendation 9.3 really talk about how esports is going to be integrated with the Olympic program. And this is going to be through the international federations. And you look at the Olympic Esports Week, we had 10 trophy titles, and all of them came through the international federations. We had Gran Turismo with the FIA, right? We had Tic Tac Bow with archery. You had Zwift with UCI. And of course, in Singapore, we're very proud of this. We had a local company, Refract, work with the International Taekwondo Federation to have virtual fighter. So I think that is the way this genre is going to go. And at GF, we also have international federations that are also members of ours. They form a council, they form a commission, and it's quite exciting how they see esports as a strategy. And if anything, we have seen if we've learned anything during the pandemic, right? Sports has to continue on, in spite of us not being able to physically connect, physically interact. How could you play basketball, with social distancing measures? But through the pandemic, we were able to have technology that converts our movements, our physical movements, not just playing with consoles and keyboards with your fingers, right? But you can physically rig up a bicycle onto a computer and compete in virtual reality. I think we'll see more of that. Same as virtual taekwondo, right? Where you have wearable technology and you're actually interacting and fighting with an avatar. I think the International Taekwondo Federation sees this as an important tool to teach and learn, where kids, before they actually start to physically spar with other kids, they actually learn through the virtual technology how to spar.
Well, I was just sitting with Jerry from World Taekwondo a few days last Friday in Seoul, and we were talking about this. He seemed really, really excited about this development, and he's talking about getting ready to take this virtual Taekwondo kids into the clubs and all of that, and kind of bringing this, distributing this globally, and I think there's lots of potential on that front.
Imagine you don't have to practice Taekwondo in a gym, right? You can be practicing Taekwondo, sparring with someone in the comforts of your own home. And that would be definitely something which international federations can use in future to increase the prominence as well as the popularity of the sport.
So today we covered esports, right? Competitive gaming and all of that. And then we kind of switched into talking about virtual taekwondo as an example of how the future of sports using technology, gaming, and actually that's kind of two quite separate.
Yeah.
In a way, are they separate? Do you see them integrating?
I see a merging.
Okay.
I mean, with Agenda 2020+5, really, eventually the IFs adopt their esports property and potentially bring it to the Olympic Games, right? The OEW was a great test bed to see the participation, the take-up of virtual simulated sports. And I was mentioning, different international federations have different objectives and strategies for esports. Take, for example, tic-tac-toe, right? It's basically tic-tac-toe, where you talk about shooting virtually, and really that actually teaches people the skills required to excel in archery. Same as virtual regatta, you have all the information and data points on the screen, and people actually sail on that. It teaches people the skills, but it's very different from let's say Zwift or virtual taekwondo, right? Where you actually have to move physically. So it really depends on what the strategy is for the international federation, whether it's more to understand the rules and gain popularity, or whether it is to be a training tool for high performance.
Well, if anything, thanks to you and your team at the organizing committee, I think the Olympic Esports Week kind of showed us how potentially esports like Gran Turismo could come together with virtual simulated sports or virtual sports, right, through this Zwift, virtual taekwondo in one event.
Exactly, and for a sport like Gran Turismo with your racing rigs, right, with your cockpits, you'll never see motorsport at the Olympic Games for many reasons. But with Gran Turismo, potentially with the FIA, maybe one day it'll be at the Olympic Games, but as a virtual simulated sport.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. Now, we're coming to the last segment of this little chat, and going back to to your experience as an athlete, sportsman, and now in esports, you've seen and organized a number of esports events. You're going to organize the World Aquatics and all that. I wanted to hear from your perspective, right? Some of that commonality you see, right, between esports and sports, right? And for context, I remember sitting in I think Lausanne, listening to Thomas Bach saying that, oh, for him as an Olympian when he was a fencer, the kind of rush and he had on stage and versus what he's seeing with the esports, he thinks it's the same. He felt it's the same, and that's one of the reasons why IOC has started to embrace esports. But your perspective?
I think as an administrator in the Global Esports Federation and seeing now esports at the Asian Games, at the Olympic Esport Week. Just recently, we held the European Games Esports Championships together with the European Olympic Committees in Katowice, Poland. Next month, we go to Santiago for the Pan Am Esports Championships together with the Pan Am Games. And at the end of the year, we have the Global Esports Games and the Asian Games next week, right? Where esports is actually a full medal sport alongside track and field, baseball, basketball, football, and swimming, aquatics, right? I think what I've appreciated is that in order to actually reach the pinnacle of esport, any sport, right? You need to put in the hours, you need to put in that dedication, and the skills that are required in esports. You're talking about mental agility, mental stamina, fast reflexes, and what I've seen, an increase in is the amount of physical activity, because you cannot hone these skills, you cannot cultivate these skills if you do not physically activate your body. You do not put in the good work in the gym. You do not exercise your eyes, your body as well, and get the right nutrition. So I see a lot more of the borrowings from sports science, from traditional sports into high performance esports. And because there's big money, right? A lot of the professional teams are actually investing a lot of this in there. They have strength conditioning coaches, they have physiologists, they have sports scientists as well. They're helping these teams. I see a lot of that. And I think...
I'll interrupt you there for a minute on that part.
Yeah.
The biggest stage for esports is the international TI,
yes.
right? Prize pools have gone up to 30 million, 40 million, and there was one team in particular that stood out, OG, and because they won it twice in a row, and everyone pointed to the fact that they had like a sports scientist, psychologist, sports psych attached to the team and all that, and then that I think really took off for that discipline.
Yeah, so it's no longer like watching someone on YouTube or Twitch for a few hours, understanding and mimicking or copying how they play. It's really like, you have to physically work out in order to be great at your craft. And I think you see more learnings and lessons and melding of the two. But I think for the international sports organizations like IOC, EOC, Pan Am Games, ODASOR, whatever, right? OCA, Olympic Council of Asia.
For an sports guy, all those big Greek, right?
These are international federations that govern sports within the continents and the regions, right? I think if they really want to, and they see esports as that potential to reach out to the youth. And if you look at the origins of the Olympic Games with Pierre de Coubertin back in 1894, right, when he first started the IOC, is really to inspire youth, inspire the next generation through sports. And if you look at how IOC has, and I don't speak for the IOC, of course, but if you look at how they've refreshed their schedule of events, take for example at the last Olympic Games, you have speed climbing, you have surfing, you had skateboarding, you had karate. I mean, they're looking at sports that actually are relevant, and I think what other sport is more relevant than esports, where you have relatively low barriers of entry, relatively high penetration at this particular demographic of youth. And if you're able to add structure, put in some values and lessons through this sport, I think there's a lot of great potential. And I think that's why a lot of international federations are actually looking at esports.
You remind me of a conversation I had, I think it was in Brazil, with this pretty popular football team called Flamingo, right? They have like 40 million fans online and all of that. And they were doing kind of like big investments into esports. They have teams in LOL and all of that. And my question to them was like, why are you so committed to esports, right? You have a traditional fan base in football. And the way they looked at it was interesting. They said that, well, they want to see Flamingo not just as a club or players. They want to see it as a brand, something that connects the generations.
Yep.
And to them, like esports is the sport for the digital natives, and they want father and son to both connect via the Flamingo brand. Right? Father loves football, son loves esports. Connect using this brand, and hopefully then also kind of like get the son to be connected to the love of football and all of that. That's kind of like. I think mirroring a lot of what you just said.
Yeah. So I think in the pandemic, we saw a lot of professional football teams pivot, not only just to have their own football soccer teams, but to have their e-football teams as well. PSG. Just recently.
Which the GF showcased recently in Riyadh?
Yeah,
just 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, just recently you were in Riyadh for Gamers 8.
Right.
And GF, we had an event there with the Global Esports Tour, partnering Konami and eFootball, right? And there were two really big teams there, Manchester United and Barca. So Barca won the event, right? And it shows that they're not only good at football, but they're also good at e-football. And it's interesting to see, this doesn't really quite happen in Singapore, but I think in overseas countries where you have the football team together with the city, and they not only just support football, but also other sports as well. And I think that added revenue stream that they have from having an esports team will also help other sports, or other traditional sports as well.
It's kind of surreal as he's mentioning about this. It just happened like the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was just not too long ago, a year back, we had His Royal Highness Faisal Banda here on the exact same stage, talking about his plans for how he wants to kind of like contribute to the global esports conversation and growth and development. And then he's gone back and organized this 8 weeks of Gamers 8, spending tens of millions of dollars.
In the middle of the desert, they built
in the middle of the
tents.
desert, right? Having some of the most amazing festivities, right? Watching time, we have maybe a cross-section of people in this room from maybe marketing, branding, sports, music, gaming, esports. We don't really have time for like a Q&A, but if they were interested to kind of like learn more or interested to see how they could work with the global esports federations, what would be some of your advice to them, or some areas that you can highlight to them?
Well, I think esports is also talking about culture and entertainment, right? What we see with, you were there at the Olympic Esports Week. You also had this huge free-to-play zone, right? We also had concerts going on, much like how we see F1, right, happening right now. You have the tournament aspect, you have the thought leadership aspect, like all that matters, as well as the entertainment aspect, which is all the concerts and the culture and fashion and music going on. I think that's where I see esports going. I think that they're going to in the Pan Am Esports Championships in 23. We're going to have that as well for the whole duration of the Pan Am Games. Having an esports tent, having all that, and celebrating culture of esports and urban culture as well. So I think there'll be ample opportunities for people in marketing as well as music to be involved in esports, because I think that's the way that is going. I think you also have, with a lot of the events, you have they're closely linked to fashion and anime and dressing up and whatnot, right? I think the culture aspect is something which is under-tapped within the whole industry. If there are opportunities to work with GF, reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to have a conversation about where we can go next year. We're expected to have 10 different events worldwide. And we definitely hope to have more people in the industry, more like-minded people in the industry, being part of this journey with us.
10 different events worldwide expected in the next year. Lots of opportunities in culture. I think that's a lot of what I'm seeing in the room. So, ladies and gentlemen, do join me in thanking Mark Chay, right, from Global Esports Federation. Now.
Thanks.